is Mark DeLoura, who is the Senior Advisor for Digital Media at the White House Office of Science and Technology. How's that? Is that it? All right. See. So thank you. So we had a horrible time scheduling this because of the government shutdown. Almost didn't happen, but very glad to have you.
Thank you.
So you've been in games for a long time, working on technology at places like Sony and THQ. How did you get this job?
Well, as you say, I've been around the industry a little bit. You can tell by my gray hair. I'm a computer science trained guy. Got into the industry sort of by luck. Nintendo. Worked at Sony for a while. Ran the industry magazine for a while. Did a few other things. But I always was really interested in the idea of using games for something else in addition to entertainment. It just seems like games are an art form where you are learning the entire game. You might just be learning how to jump over a chasm or how to pop somebody on the head, but you're learning. So why couldn't we use this for learning in other ways? So I'd always kept in touch with the serious games movement, and Ben Sawyer and those guys. And Constance Steinkühler was in this role for about 7 months. And when she decided to leave the administration, they started looking for someone else to fill the role. And I ended up on a short list. We had a lot of conversations. We had 7 months of vetting. And that's how I ended up.
Okay. Cool. So what's it like to be a gamer in the White House?
It's kind of weird. Every morning when I walk in the security gate, I'm like, I'm going to the office. I'm going to the office. I'm like, okay, this is my office. This is kind of insane. Well, the funny thing is, for the first 2 months, I kept hearing walking down the halls. The halls are all these like black and white parquet floors, and I just kept hearing the Zelda chest opening song. I couldn't figure out why. And I figured out like the floors mirror the floors in the game, and I forget which of the Zeldas it is. Anyway, so I kept hearing this song over and over and over. As you walk around the White House, you run into security people everywhere. You run into people who make government run. It seems like a strange place, but there are also these little doors everywhere that just remind me of video games. Like inside of the building, there are these 2/3 height. They look like Hobbit doors. I'm not quite sure where they go. I haven't gone in there yet. But all I keep thinking is that there's some mini game to be made here to get in and out of these corridors. One of these days I'll figure it out.
So I've been in this place, but only in the virtual worlds of, I think it was Modern Warfare 2 and Saints Row 4 as well. So one day I want to see the real thing.
If you come visit sometime, I'll have to ask you your way around.
So people also play games in the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm trying to find all those people and collect them up kind of Pokemon style. So we can play games together. So we have a weekly civilization game online of people in the White House, just for fun. I've definitely run into people who are super hardcore World of Warcraft addicts. I try to find everybody who says they're not a gamer and point out that they're playing Candy Crush and that means they're a gamer. So I think everybody's a gamer. And people who say they aren't gamers, I can usually find what they're playing. So yeah, it's fun being in the White House with people who seem very straight and narrow. I'm a game developer. I'm very informal, and there's a lot of formality. I love breaking through that.
So have you detected whether President Obama is interested in gaming?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't have a job if he wasn't. Yeah, there are two angles I think the president's really interested in gaming. So one angle is how do we use games to teach? So I think he's been quoted as saying, why can't we make educational tutors that are as compelling as a video game? He wants to see Sasha and Malia playing a video game that teaches them something, and that engaged. And then the second thing he's really interested in is the idea that you can use making video games to encourage people to learn about mathematics, science, STEM-related activities, even art and animation. People who are inspired to build a game may find that they're really inspired by some of the subjects that it takes expertise in to build those. So he's also super interested in that.
So it's like communism in the days of old, infiltrating the White House in nefarious ways. It's time for the president's children. So I guess when people hear that the government is interested in games, the thing that might come to mind is censorship, right?
Yeah.
But I take it this is not part of your work.
Yeah, well, at least not something like that. I think that, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's a Pavlovian response that is totally understandable, right? It's been 20 years since the Night Trap and Mortal Kombat areas. 20 years of any time anybody from the government shows up, what they want to talk to you about is, why are your games so loud? So I totally understand the response. I have that response. I'm a gamer. I get it. So what I'm trying to focus on is, like, there is this conversation about violent video games. It's out there. Let's focus on how we use games for good things. Don't get me wrong, I love Call of Duty. I played the crap out of Grand Theft Auto. But there's also a whole bunch of interesting good things we can do with games as well. And education is an area that I have been focusing on a lot.
You are interested in rating systems, I guess, for games, like what's happening, say, with ratings for mobile games.
Yeah, so I'm super interested in the rating systems. And I love the work that the SRB has done. I think, again, I sort of want to call it out as like a Pavlovian thing.
The industry's own ratings board, the entertainment software ratings board.
Yeah, so the SRBs are when you see the M, and the T, the E, the AO, and the bullet on the box. It says this is the rating for this game, and it's appropriate for kids of this maturity level. And every media form has this, right? The MPAA for movies, there's RIAA, which does explicit lyrics on music. There's even one for books. There's a TV parental guidance thing that pops up in the corner when you're watching TV. So ours is the SRB for games. But if you look, what you'll see is that you really only see the SRB these days on console games. And so the SRB grew out of these hearings back in 1993. They were a reaction to some of the criticism back then. And I think that they've been a really good shield for the industry. It benefited us a lot. It provided service to parents. And people know what those are when they see those on the box. So for me, when I see that only maybe 30% of game purchases, perhaps, whatever the percentages of people buying console games, it's getting smaller and smaller in comparison to the huge number of people playing mobile games. But mobile games don't use those ratings. So people don't really get that valuable information. There are rating systems. Apple has one, Google has one, but they're created by those companies, and they're different from the ESRB, which is what people really know. So I'm, as a game developer, I really would like to see consolidation in this space, and I would like to see a consistent rating system. But I want that because I want it to be of service to parents. I think the game industry should be of service to parents. And so please fix this problem.
So your very interest, I guess, in educational games suggests that the industry also hasn't done enough there. What do you think that is, and how can the government help?
Yeah, good question. I focus a lot on educational games, and back in the 90s, the early 90s, mid 90s, there was this huge edutainment industry, it thrived for 7 or 10 years, and it fell apart. Due to a variety of reasons. There's a fantastic Wikipedia page if you want it. There's also a great book about it. It details why people think that came apart. And then I think it's been conventional wisdom since then in the game industry that you just cannot make money making educational games. So that's why people make educational games. Totally reasonable reaction. So why are we interested in educational games? Well, there's a huge missed opportunity for kids there. Like, the fact that money can be made doesn't mean that they're not valuable. The real question is, how do we bridge that gap? Like, what do we do to encourage the marketplace to create new educational games when there's not a really clear, at the moment, or historically, reason to go in there to try to make money? Now, the good news is that there's been this slow churning, tidal change in investment. So there is a really increasing interest in educational technologies, investments there. There are companies sprouting up like Rupert Murdoch's Amplify. There are huge amounts of investment going into educational technology from places like the Gates Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation. So lots of money coming into the space, lots of people thinking about problems. And then, so great, there's investment. I think there's investment out there if you want to make these games. You still need, how do you sell these games? It's another big question. As a game developer, and I think one of the amazing things about games is that you get people in a room who are not like each other at all. you get an artist, and you get a programmer, and you get a designer and producer, and you get an audio person. And they all create something amazing. I would never have guessed these people would get along in high school, let alone making a game. So, okay, so now you need to throw in a learning researcher or an educator, somebody who knows about how you go about teaching a subject. Okay, well, we get along pretty well as these 5 different disciplines. We can probably get along with a 6th different discipline. We can figure this out. And that person is necessary to help us figure out how to make these games better and reach the market, which is out there in schools or with teaching, or with parents. So parents after school are looking for things to augment what their kids are learning at school. And I think we're still all trying to figure out how to crack that nut. And I think where government can help is by getting all these people together, using the convening power of the White House to bring together game developers, researchers, educators, parents, and have a conversation about this, to bring in the nonprofits, to talk to websites like graphite.org or a Common Sense Media site where they rate how good games are at teaching, how engaging they are for kids. So there's a lot of churn. I just said like 5 or 6 big categories of things in which there's a ton of churn going on. But I think for all of us in this room who aren't intimately involved in this space, like, you probably cannot think of where you would go to find a great educational game. Like, how do I? Is it on the App Store? Is there a section can I go to? Are there ratings? It's just unclear. So I think this is a real problem we need to tackle.
So you also participated in the violent media discussions between the vice president and the game industry. John Riccatello, formerly of EA, was in there. Mike Gallagher, I think, as well. So you managed to get the right people in the room, having a conversation. How did that happen? And how did it go in general?
It was definitely an interesting experience. I was not yet in the White House at that time. But Constance was out of the White House. So she reached out to me, and we had a conversation. And she reached out to ESA, to Mike, and to try to get the right people in the room to have a conversation, because the vice president wanted to bring the game industry in there. I think the conversation went well. Riccatello was amazing. Mike was amazing. These guys are great representatives of the game industry. And I think that the takeaway for all of us who were there, I guess maybe I can only speak for myself, it was not quite what I would have expected. I mean, there's a conversation about research, and there's a conversation about perception. And the conversation about research is, do researchers know whether violent games cause long-term violent behavior? The answer there is no. They don't know. And there's a lot of research out there, and none of it really adequately tested. But I think that if you look at it all, there's a slight inclination towards a slight amount of aggression, which I kind of think of as, you suck at Madden, and maybe not more than that. But, there's research ongoing. So the other conversation is about perception. And that conversation is, do people think that it causes a problem? And if the public thinks that it does cause a problem, then that's a problem for the game industry. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's like we need to figure out a way to address that through conversation, through ratings, which I think is a great way to do that. And so there will be research ongoing. People will continue looking at this. And those of you who've followed this space know that there's been a long history of media forms over time that people are blamed for violent things, all the way back to, honestly, writing thousands of years ago was going to cause the downfall of civilization. So this is not a new thing, and I personally don't think it's probably a problem. But people think it's a problem. We need to figure out a way to do something about that.
I'm curious how you take that conversation into sort of any more concrete steps or just a higher level.
Yeah, well, so the things that I do is I'm talking to a lot of people about rating systems, saying, hey, pointing out the problem, pointing out that the solution 20 years ago was to put together a rating system that spanned what Sega was trying to do, and spanned what Nintendo was trying to do, and made a unified system, which we don't have. So it's a clear thing that we can do that would help. And my check just kicked in on the other half.
So you are excited about teaching kids to code through games.
Yeah.
Because gamification is sort of a big topic.
Yeah. So my role in the White House is digital media guy, which really means it's a games guy. But I really get involved as well in the idea of coding as a literacy. So people spend so much time on the web these days, but so few people know how it actually works. And can you may have, the first thing you might have done when you woke up this morning is hit CNN.com or something, but if you needed to edit a web page and post something up to tell your family what you're doing or whatever, could you do it? And if you can't, why not? I really feel like that should be the literacy. You can write a book. You don't need to, but you could. You could. Same should be true of coding. So how do we fix that? I think an interesting thing to look at right now is what's going on in the UK. So the UK has, for years and years and years, had in their national curriculum for schools, for kids from ages 5 to 17, they taught them what's called ICT. And that's how to use a computer, how to get on the web, how to use Word, Photoshop, and all the tools you need to be a citizen on the internet. And over the past couple of years, what they decided is, we're going to take a sharp turn, and we're going to actually teach kids what the net is and how to be a citizen of it who is a creator, not just a consumer. So they take an ICT curriculum and they've ripped it out, and they're sticking in their computer program. Kids from ages 5 to 17. That's amazing. So kids who are 5 are going to learn about what's a computer, what's an algorithm, how does a computer work, simple stuff. And then they're going to learn programming languages they move on to school. This is totally amazing. So here in the US, I think that the people who are also really interested in this idea, and code.org is really, you can point to them as the flag bearers here. And code.org is putting together this called Computer Science Education Week, which is in mid-December. And they're trying to get as many people as possible in the US to take an hour of their time that day and spend it learning to program. And so they're partnering up with all sorts of organizations, entertainment organizations, game companies, Microsoft, Sony, Google, pretty much everybody they can find, and they're saying, your lifeblood is people who know how to code. So why don't you create an hour of curriculum that teaches them how to do it? I'm just super excited about that.
At least we all know how to tweet these days, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah.
Learning to code is the next step.
Learning to code is the next step. I should say there's a step after that as well, which I think is the second hour of coding. It's like, okay, I got an hour done. There needs to be an on-ramp for people who find it to be a really compelling thing and want to make it part of their career. Like, where do you go from here is another question I'm super curious about.
Does anybody have a question? Christina?
I'm wondering how involved you are with the FCC and the Connected program to bring more broadband to schools, because I can see the lack of internet access, especially in rural areas, being a damper to educational gains in schools.
Yeah. So the Connected program, that's a great question. So I'm not super involved with the FCC. Connected program itself, I know a couple of folks who are really active with it, and we collaborate together. So Connected is the idea that schools need to be hooked up to high-speed broadband in order to be able to use all the tools and the educational gains that we're going to make. If they're not connected, it's kind of a real missed opportunity. So, yeah, I got involved in that a little bit from the perspective of, great, here's an empty pipe. What are you going to do with it? I think it's a really, really interesting program, and hopefully we can make a lot of difference there. I think that it's kind of hilarious, actually, when you think about it. The idea that you could have a school now that does not have broadband, it's ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
Like, I spent all my day on the internet. You really want kids to have access to the internet from every part of the country.
Seems like broadband is a big deal when it comes to the U.S. Industry's competitiveness with the rest of the world as well. It's no accident, I think, that Asian mobile game companies are starting to acquire a lot of U.S. game companies because they're just way ahead, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's like traditionally, I think you and I probably both watched this over time in South Korea for a long time. They always seem to be just ahead. They'd have these huge esports tournaments. They'd have PC bombs, cafes where people would go to play games, and all this. Why don't we have that? Why don't we have that in the U.S.? Why don't we have that? And now
they're bringing it here.
Exactly. That's great.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.